The while loop is going to be the second type of loop that we look at in MATLAB. And the while loop is not necessarily always a counter. The while loop performs an algorithm until a certain condition is reached. So the for loop is more used as a counter. So it's going to keep doing an algorithm until some sort of number of iterations has been elapsed. But a while loop just keeps going until some specific condition is reached. So for instance, sure, we could enter a certain character and it could terminate the while loop. We could go through and we could keep doing an operation until the Boolean result is false, or we could perform an operation until a specific error is less than a predetermined error. All right, and we're actually going to see that in a few moments. In MATLAB, while condition, and then you have your algorithm, and then you end is the general algorithm for this. So it's not too difficult to be able to implement one of these. If for some reason you might want to have two conditions, so a condition within the while loop, you can use this if condition break. All right, so for some reason, if you start getting into like a negative number and you don't want to do that, or if the user starts to enter something that you don't want them to enter, you can break the while loop. So you can kind of get out of that loop as sort of a caution. So this is more of like error checking or a secondary condition if for some reason. So we're going to take a look at two examples of implementing a while loop. So the first one says that we're going to write MATLAB code to simulate rolling two-sided dice, and you're playing against a computer. So you're going to roll two dice, and then the computer is going to roll two dice. If the user rolls higher, then the user gets a point. If the user rolls lower, the computer gets a point. And if for some reason there's a tie, no points are awarded. And then after each simulation, the user is going to be asked if they want to continue. And if the user enters Y, they play again. If the user enters N, the game is over and the results are printed. Now there's no error checking in here. So they're basically just going to keep entering Ys and Ns. And there's nothing to say that if the user enters an M, that something else is going to happen. We could certainly write code like that, but we're not going to. All right, first things first. Let's define the user wins as 0. So I'm going to call that U wins is 0. And I'm going to say computer wins is equal to 0. Right? Now, I'm going to, again, we're just going to assume that this is going to run one time no matter what. And so I'm going to have a choice. I'm going to say C is equal to the character Y. And what this is going to do is this is going to ensure that the loop runs the first time. All right. We're going to say while Y or C is equal to Y. And notice we use the double equal because we want it to be Boolean. Right? We're going to have a user die. So user die is going to be equal to, or user die 1, because there's two dice. And remember the rand function, we're going to say rand. And remember rand gives us a number between 1 and, or sorry, 0 and 1. So we're going to multiply that by 6. So now we have a number between 0 and 6. So now let's round this. And we're going to round it to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to say round 0. Right? So again, what this does is this produces a random number between 0 and 6, then rounds to nearest whole number. Right? And then not surprisingly, we're going to do this again. So we're going to have a user die 2. Right? So different random number. And then we're going to have the sum. So we're going to have user sum is going to be equal to U die 1 plus U die 2. Sounds a bit morbid. Now we're going to have the exact same stuff, except we're going to have computer dice. All right, so I'm just going to call this to C die, C die, C sum, C die 1, C die 2. All right, so, and it's the same thing. This is just our computer dice. All right, so now what we could do is we could print out what the what the user rolls as well as what the computer is going to roll. So we're going to say fprintf, even though we don't have to do this, we're going to. So we're going to say user rolls, and let's say %d and %d for a total of %d. And we're going to have udie1, udie2, and usum. And we're going to do the exact same thing for the computer. And we're still inside this while loop. So let's just call this cdie1, cdie2, and csum. All right, so now we've rolled the dice. Now we have to figure out who wins. Okay, so if usum is greater than csum, we're going to increment u wins. So u wins equals u wins plus 1. And we're going to fprintf. We can just say user wins. Okay. And let's have an else if. And we're not counting ties, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to say else if csum is greater than usum, then we're going to say cwins is equal to cwins plus 1, and we're going to say computer wins. Right? And then the last thing we have to do is we have to determine whether the user is going to play again. And we should end this if statement. So we're going to say c equals input, and this is part of the while statement. So we're going to say play again. And we're going to say enter y for yes, not n, but enter y for yes, n for no. All right. We're going to end. All right, so let's just run this. All right, and then we'll go ahead and we'll tabulate the to determine who really won. All right, so we're going to run this, see if there's any errors. All right, so the first time it goes is that user rolls a 1 and a 2 for a 3, and then the computer rolls a 3 and a 6 for a 9. So obviously the computer wins. Now let's play again. And user rolls a 6, and then computer again cheats, wins, and rolls a 12. All right, so now let's back out of this. All right, the last thing we want to do is we want to see ultimately who won after we just did so many times. Okay, so last thing we're going to do is we are going to fprintf the user won %d times, and let's just call u wins. And we're just going to copy this, and the computer wins cwin times. And we're going to say if u wins greater than cwins, we're going to fprintf user is the ultimate winner, and else if we're going to say cwins is less than or greater than, u wins. Then we're going to fprintf that computer is the ultimate winner. And the only other option is that we have a tie, which could happen. So let's just say else fprintf tie. Good enough. All right. And then we're going to end the F statement. Okay, so that should be everything that we need to be able to execute and do our program. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. All right, and I'm going to do this 10 times. So I'm just going to copy and paste this so I can just do a control V. All right, so user wins, And then computer wins, and then user wins. All right, and not sure what's going on here. I just ran out of real estate here. There we go. So I'm just going to keep running this. And let me see if I can roll the screen up just a little bit so we can see. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to keep running this. And finally, I'm done playing the game. So done. All right. And it says the user won 6 times, the computer won 6 times, so there's a tie. All right. So at least it logically looks like it works out. But more importantly, it shows us how to utilize a while loop that doesn't necessarily have a certain number of times that we're going to execute the algorithm. It's more based on the user telling us when they've had enough. Now, in the next video, we're going to take a look at a while loop. And this is one where we're going to meet a certain error condition. And if it meets a certain error condition, then we're going to stop.